Well, to discuss this further, I'm now joined by John Laughlin from the Institute for Democracy and Cooperation in Paris. Mr. Laughlin, many thanks for joining us. Now, as we just heard in that report from Maria Fanoshina, both sides of the conflict are accused of human rights abuses now. But when Gaddafi shelled Benghazi, for example, the West spoke of saving civilians. But now Gaddafi's hometown of Sirt's under attack. What about the civilians there?
Well, to paraphrase George Orwell in Animal Farm, some civilians are more equal than others. I don't think anybody seriously bought the line that this intervention was about protecting civilians. That was merely the fig leaf, the legal fig leaf that France, Britain and America used to overthrow Gaddafi. And I've been on your show several times, on your channel several times about this issue, and I've always said that the principal goal was regime change. That has now been achieved, in spite of the very interesting report that you've just carried on the pockets of resistance. I'm afraid it does seem obvious that the Gaddafi regime has fallen, and that's why David Cameron and Nicolas Sarkozy have gone there today. It's to demonstrate that fact, and it's to publicise, to show to the world their victory, at least in their own terms.
Well, on this visit by Sarkozy and David Cameron to Tripoli, both have stressed that intervention had nothing to do with economic advantage, but Libya is due to resume oil exports in about 4 days. In your opinion, does that suggest any significance with regards to the timing of this Cameron-Sarkozy visit?
Well, I mean, again, let's not be naive and let's not pretend to be naive. I've no doubt that economic advantage will accrue to the Western powers who've supported the new regime. They, particularly France, but followed by Britain and America, they pushed for early recognition of the Transitional National Council, and that body has now effectively taken power. So it is inevitable that oil contracts and so on will be awarded accordingly. But as with the Iraq war, it's my own view that oil contracts are not the whole story. I instead believe that these wars, Iraq, Libya, Kosovo for that matter in 1999, they are ideological wars. The West, by overthrowing Gaddafi, wanted to maintain the fiction that the entire world is moving towards a Western-dominated model, a pro-Western model. It wanted to show that the Arab Spring movement was a movement for liberal Western-style democracy. And of course, as soon as a country stayed as a regime stood in the way of that apparent wave, which was the case of Libya, its regime was brushed aside. So my view is that this war was principally ideological, but yes, also about oil, there's no doubt.
OK, well, we are where we are. Cameron and Sarkozy are now in Libya, and just as the first signs of a rift really are beginning to appear in the NTC, the National Transitional Council, the new Prime Minister, Mahmoud Jibril, is accused by some of his rivals of bringing in former Gaddafi officials and, from some sources within the country, acting like a dictator. So how much support and credibility does his leadership have, this new leadership that was swept to power by the Libyans themselves? You were asking that question, I'm sure, in an ironic tone. They were not brought to power by the Libyans themselves. They were brought to power by certain segments of Libyan society, a society which, of course, is largely tribal, so people will have fought along tribal lines, but most of all, they were brought to power by NATO's bombs, by British and French planes and by British and French covert operations with the participation of the Americans. And the fact that this or that new Libyan politician is accused of misdemeanors or dictatorship or collaborating with the old regime is ultimately of no importance. We saw similar accusations brought against various members of the Iraq government, the post-Saddam Iraq government in 2003. And those people came and went. And the same thing will happen in Libya for the simple reason that as soon as things settle down, and indeed I predict in the next couple of weeks, a sort of protectorate will be set up. No doubt under UN aegis if possible, but some kind of military protectorate, Franco-German-American protectorate will be set up. And it's also my prediction that this protectorate, which will be the effective government of Libya, whoever the civilians happen to be who are, as it were, pushed forward, that protectorate, that intervention will, in my view, last for a very long time, and I would say quite possibly for a decade. So the real power will, of course, go to the people who brought the regime into power and who sustain it in office, namely NATO. OK, well, very strong predictions there. So, just to repeat my questions, how much genuine support and credibility does this new leadership have, the NTC, within Libya itself?
itself among Libyans?
Well, I'm not on the ground. I'm not in a position to know that. I mean, my suspicion is that the NTC has local support in the east of the country, and possibly in other parts of the country as well. But I'd rather not try to answer that question without having at least visited the place and known it better. I mean, we know that Libya is a tribal society like many other Arab states. I assume that it's supported by some sections of the population and opposed by others. And your report has done an excellent job of reminding people that while I think there's no serious doubt that the Gaddafi regime was obviously a dictatorship, it reminded us that even dictatorships have a popular constituency. Even dictatorships are sustained in power by a certain degree of popular support, and you found people there in Tripoli who continue to have that support.
OK. John Lauchland, Director of Studies at the Institute for Democracy and Cooperation in Paris, thank you for those thoughts.